In today's thrift store challenge, we will be headed off to Target to get some much needed Studio McGee inspiration, as well as looking at the McGee & Co website, and then we will be headed off to the thrift store to see what we can come up with for a whole lot less. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Starting off with baskets through the McGee & Co line, it's definitely one of those areas that gets incredibly expensive quickly, especially if you're trying to buy sets of matching baskets for built-ins or just for storage in general. And even through their Target line, Studio McGee baskets are just a little bit more than I'm willing to spend, especially because I know eventually I will find a really great basket at the thrift store. For example, most recently at the Hartville thrift shop, I came across this really beautiful, just like perfect dark brown woven lidded hamper with a kind of linen insert. Best part is that it was only $4. So like everything, we're going to wash the insert, wash the basket, but the main thing that I really love about the McGee & Co hampers is that they have wheels. In order for us to add any kind of wheels to the bottom of these hampers, we need to have something inside of the basket for the wheels to kind of latch onto. So I like to just take some scrap wood that I have in my stash. This used to be an old shelf from our built-in, so I just measured the bottom of the thrifted basket and cut it down to the appropriate size. Another place besides the thrift store that you can find really great hampers like this is Marshall's or Home Goods clearance. This one is just $22. For the shape, I would just recommend using like a wood round. Place it on the bottom of the inside of the hamper, and then you can attach the wheels that way. With our wood piece all measured out now, I'm just going to place this on the inside of the basket, and we're going to turn the basket now on its side so we can attach our wheels. So the wheels that I'm using, I've already had. I repurposed them from another project to add to this basket. Just place the wheels basically on the inside of the corners there, making sure that the screws I'm using are long enough to reach that wood piece and stay nice and put. With the insert washed now, there were just a few small little holes there that I just needed to repair, so I just used some needle and thread. Luckily, the holes were just right on the seam, so it was very easy to disguise these, and it is good as new. Baskets similar to these from McGee & Co can be over $100, so the fact that I was able to create this look for just about $4 because I had all of the other supplies already is a major savings. Moving along now into trays, which are just such an essential part for corralling and reducing visual clutter. McGee & Co has such beautiful options made of really good quality materials like marble and travertine, but they do come at a pretty hefty price tag. Which of course now brings us to the thrift store, and while I would say finding really high quality, heavy duty materials for trays is not impossible, it's just more rare. So let's go the route of repurposing instead. No matter how bad your thrift store is, one thing that you can almost always find are some sort of wall art pieces that can now become trays. For example, I found this little round wall art piece that was just $1 at the Hartville thrift shop. First thing we are going to do is just remove any components that are meant for this piece to be hung up on the wall, because we will be using this as a tray. Everything always gets a good dusting and clean, and really, I mean, the choice is yours. I'm just choosing to use a spray paint that I already had, which is this black enamel spray paint, and that is really just to keep the cost low for this project. Spray paint can be expensive, so I always recommend using what you already have to get the look that you're trying to achieve. In order for me to make this feel more like a tray, I considered either giving it some handles on either side or just elevating it a bit, which you'll see of quite often through the McGee & Co line. They'll have little ball feet or just some sort of way to raise the tray. I had found several of these tables, and last week I shared with you guys one of those tables that I repurposed. This time I'm just going to use the legs from one of those tables, and I'm just going to cut down that final bottom section there and just raise the tray up ever so slightly using these, cut them down Using my miter saw, just gave them a quick little scuff sand to the top so they would be nice and flush when we go to attach them. Because all of the pieces we're working with are wood and really lightweight, I felt totally comfortable just using some Gorilla Wood glue in this case because it is very strong, especially when you're not having to uphold something that's really heavy. Just spaced those out equally, and then again, just spray painted them using the same spray paint we used for the top, and this was the end result. A different kind of variation of the same idea, again, is to just take some sort of a wall art sign that can be the shape of a tray, remove any hardware that is meant for it to be hung up on the wall, and save these because you can always reuse them for other projects. For this project, I decided to separate the bottom from all of the sides. McGee & Co. uses a lot of fabric covered boxes and trays, so I had so much of this grass cloth wallpaper left over. So we are going to cover this now tray with all of this fabric. As any contact paper, you always just want to make sure that you are kind of pulling in a diagonal motion and just smoothing everything out as you go, which is, again, when you can separate things to kind of get the absolute cleanest finish possible, it just makes it that much easier for application, and it gives it a really kind of like factory-like finish. Also, don't forget about the bottom. Everything gets covered with this fabric, smoothed out so it looks like you've bought it at a store and not like a DIY project. My husband likes to tell me that I'm a hoarder, and I like to tell him that I'm a collector. So I have a ton of hardware that I collect over time. And it's times like these that I'm really grateful that I do, because I found the perfect hardware for this little DIY tray, took some quick measurements, drilled a hole using a drill bit just slightly smaller than the screws I would need. I didn't like that the screws were silver and the handles were like a brushed brass. So I just went in with some gold leaf just to kind of make those match a little bit better. And that really wraps it up for this project. The only new thing I truly had to buy for this DIY tray was the wall art, which only cost $1.75. So a major savings in the grand scheme of things when you can just DIY a little bit yourself. If you are a lover of McGee & Co., odds are you have a love also for primitive and vintage pieces, because those are sprinkled basically all throughout the website. So let's do a little McGee & Co. gift set idea for the holidays. So I do want to preface this by saying you want to make sure that you really know the person that you're gifting this to. There's a lot of people in my life who would not appreciate the primitiveness of this tray. They would think I was giving them just something old and crusty. But there's a few people who I know would love the rusticity of this caddy here and appreciate the age to it. So when I found this caddy at the bins, the bottom had become unattached from the caddy. So I did have to reattach those, and I just used some little finishing nails to just reattach that bottom piece all throughout. And now it's just time for a good clean. Starts off always with a good dusting for me, and then I like to use a disinfectant spray just to kind of wipe the whole thing down, and then just vacuuming out any dust that wasn't grabbed the first time around. Caddies can be used in a million and one ways, but for this gift idea, I thought it would be really nice for like a wine gift basket. So to start, I found these really, really beautiful ribbed wine glasses that look like something you would find from McGee & Co., but these were just about $1.50 for 4 of them. Something similar on McGee & Co. would be almost $40. So a major savings there, and a really easy pairing when you're giving any kind of glassware gift is of course coasters. And I had thrifted that huge box, if you guys remember, of travertine coasters, and I had 4 left over. So I'm just going to use these, add some felt pads to the bottom, and just wrap them in some twine. Just a really kind of no-brainer accompaniment for a gift like this one. Another thing I always seemingly find at the thrift store are these little velvet bags, and I believe that these are usually used for different liquors. I don't pick them up if they have any writing on them, but this one was just nice and plain and this beautiful burgundy velvet color. So I decided I'll put the recipient's favorite wine inside of here. The finishing off piece is just going to be a small little picture frame ornament. And this is really something you can DIY with any small picture frame that you might find at Dollar Tree or at the thrift store, and then just simply attaching some ribbon to the back of it. You could just place the recipient's name in here, almost using it like a kind of jumbo gift tag, or just a picture of the two of you in there. But I think this makes for a very thoughtful and complete gift idea, but was super affordable because every single piece here came from the Goodwill bins. Moving along now into some DIY ornament ideas. I know, guys, it is so early. It's not even Halloween by the time this video goes live, but if you're someone like myself and you thrift and DIY almost all of your holiday decor, it's really important that you start now. Now, sometimes you can get lucky at the thrift store and find like an identical dupe to something you would find from a high-end store. Like I found these really beautiful icicles. I found 20 of them for just $1.29. Also found this really beautiful glass bell here, but more often than not, the ornament section I would say is almost always a little bit picked over. So I recommend just kind of trying to think outside the box and see what you can come up with. So I found these. I'm not sure what these are supposed to be used for, but we're gonna make them ornaments. So the first thing I needed to do was just remove all of those wooden cubes from that dowel, so that way these can be our kind of like present ornaments. Also found the little wooden trees for just 49 cents each. Now these are not already ornaments, so we will have to turn them into ornaments very easily. I did want to do kind of a color wash on these so they match my floors a little bit better. They were unfinished and ready for paint or stain, so I just mixed a few stains together that I felt like matched my floors a little bit better and just applied that generously and then wiped off any excess. So for the trees, to make these into some sort of hanging ornaments, you can grab little small O-ring hooks and just screw those into the top. I could not find any in my stash, so I just used a little finishing nail and we'll just attach it that way. For the presents, I just went in my stash and I grabbed some velvet ribbon, and we're just going to wrap the ribbon around and tie it like a present. Again, taking a little finishing nail. I didn't want to have the ornament, I guess, just like sitting straight up and down, so I put the nail in one of the corners of the wood cubes, so then that way it would just be kind of slanting down. So for 3 of the present ornaments and 4 of the wooden tree ornaments, I spent less than $5, which is even better than places like the Dollar Tree, but we're getting a really high-end look overall. Last but not least, let's talk about some wall decor options. Now, as it's getting darker earlier, especially in these winter months, rather than put up artwork, I think a nice option is to hang up a wall sconce. So when I found this one at the Hartford Thrift Shop for just $1, I loved the mix of materials here, kind of with like that stone, almost looked like roofing material, and then metal, of course. So starting off by, again, just separating everything, giving it a good clean. Because I didn't want to use a pillar candle or even just a real tapered candle, I wanted to use a battery operated taper candle that I also found at the thrift store. I needed to cut down that prong there so it would be able to fit inside. So I just did so using my hacksaw. So in order for that taper candle to have a place to sit inside of, I just used one of these little plastic pieces that you can get for less than $1 at the hardware store. I choose the size that's 3/4 of an inch because that's generally the diameter of most taper candles. And to attach it, I just use some Gorilla Glue that is designed for metal, which is kind of essential in a project like this one. To give it a more kind of luxe look instead of rustic, I decided to use some metallic brass spray paint, and I just gave several light coats until the whole thing was completely covered, and then just gave a dusting of some metallic oil rubbed bronze spray paint just to give it a little bit of variation. I painted the stone piece first just with some matte white paint, and then taking some watered down antiquing wax, just kind of brushed that on, and then just removed any excess with a paper towel just to give a kind of lightened look. Attached the 2 pieces together, and this was the end result. Because I had all of the other supplies, this really only cost $1, and I think it's the perfect thing to put on the wall during these colder winter months. And that really wraps it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments which hack or project or find was your favorite this week, and I will see you guys next Sunday. Bye for now.